There is no animal in the British Isles that is more wild or eccentric than the brown hare. It is quite simply a law unto itself. The hare is a paradoxical creature, if ever there was one. It can be bold, reckless, and utterly oblivious to danger, or timid and highly secretive. Its natural history is mysterious. Even people who've spent all their lives in hare country seldom agree about exactly how it lives. There's one thing, though, that we all know about hares. They're mad. The creature with that impenetrable, glassy stare has become the classic storybook madcap, like the Mad March Hare in Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. For the Mad March Hare, it was always tea time, along with the Mad Hatter, another wild eccentric. The hare's reputation for lunacy and crazy exploits is worldwide. This is the guard from an ancient Japanese sword. A golden hare, almost certainly intoxicated, is poling himself across a river in a wine cup. Where he's come from or where he's going, we don't know. The hare probably hasn't much of a clue either. In Britain, it's in spring that wild hares traditionally go mad. They career around the countryside in a state of complete abandon and box each other about. They can be highly aggressive and make the fur fly. In the frenzied outbreaks of fighting, hares get absolutely hopping mad. But why do hares get so mad? No other mammal in Britain behaves like this. It's worth taking a closer look at the hare and its wild, unpredictable life. The brown hare feeds on crops and pasture. It lives over most of England, Scotland and Wales, often sharing its habitat with the lapwing. Both favour flat, open farmland, though hares do sometimes occur in deciduous woodland. The farm is an ideal place for a hare to live. Every field the farmer ploughs means a new source of food when the crops come up later on. With different crops sown throughout the year, the farms provide the hare with a welcome variety of diet. Farmers don't generally begrudge the hare some of the fruits of their hard work. They like to see the hare about. But today, they're seeing far fewer hares. In the 1960s and 70s, the hare population fell sharply to about a quarter of its earlier level. So many changes in agricultural practice were happening at the time that scientists were at first unable to pin the blame on any one cause in particular. Was it chemicals, new crop varieties, or just a series of cold, wet springs? The hare is a member of the lagomorph family, which also includes the rabbit. It's easy to confuse the two at a distance, especially if they're sitting still. The rabbit, like this one, is quite a bit smaller than the hare, but the best way to tell them apart is by the ear length. A hare's much longer ears give it a very distinctive appearance. The hare's large ears and its tail are marked with black. The hind legs are much longer and more powerful than a rabbit's. Hares don't have burrows for protection. They live out in the open, relying on their legs to outpace their predators. To keep it warm in the open, the hare has a thick coat, which is white on the belly and reddish-brown above, flecked with tawny gold, white and black, to camouflage it. The hare does have some features in common with the rabbit, like its sensitive nose and its split, or hare lip. The brown hare has two close relations in Britain. The smaller mountain, or blue hare, lives on high moorlands in Scotland and parts of northern England. It has a white coat in winter to camouflage it when it snows. The Irish hare is similar to the brown hare, but has a more orange, almost fox-red coat. It behaves as recklessly as the brown hare. All three types of hare declined in number at the same time, but the brown hare was the subject of most research. It is by nature solitary and unsociable, but in the mad season, in spring, it shows an intense, if sporadic, interest in its fellows. The jacks, the male hares, roam from their home grounds to compete for the females, or gills. The two sexes are almost impossible to distinguish, except for the behaviour. In fact, there's an ancient Welsh country belief that the hare changes sex every month. The jacks put on a wild display, poking and punching kangaroo style. The females are more reticent. Here, a jack approaches one, lying in her form. Another jack bursts in on the scene, but the first one fights him off. The female is not yet willing to mate, but jack hares are persistent suitors. In the mad season, they pursue any gill regardless of whether or not she's receptive. A gill hare will try to keep head and shoulders above any jack who won't leave her alone. From this position, she can box down any mating attempt. In a really serious argument, both parties will bite each other and end up with mouthfuls of fur. Just occasionally, they'll call a truce and give the impression of being a contented couple. But Mad March hares are highly temperamental, and the fur may fly again at any moment. Again, the gill just manages to keep on top of things. Fighting can lead to injury. This one's lost the tip of its right ear. Many get bloody noses too, and lie up for a while, with that mad brown eye keeping watch for trouble. In some parts of the country, hares are called dew hoppers. When the dew is on the ground is when they like to feed. Hares don't usually move around during the day, but in the mad season they break all their own rules, courting in earnest by day and by night. Contrary to popular belief, it's not just in March that hares go mad. In a mild year, they may box and batter each other as early as January, and may continue well into August. But the peak of activity does come in March and April. This pair, at least, seem to have made the right match. But there's no privacy in hare society. Just at the critical moment, another jack barges his way in and causes utter confusion. Hares are polygamous, and a jack will try to fertilize as many gills as possible. His constant nagging may take a lot of his time and land him in a lot of trouble, but the payoff is that his attentions bring the female into season, and then she'll bear his young. And to him, that's all that matters. If the jack and gill stay together at all, it's only for a day or two at most. Immediately after mating, the male resumes his roaming existence, leaving the female to rear the family, though she may not be completely free of him. Hares produce their offspring, called leverets, from February through to September. This gill is heavy with young and will soon give birth. She makes herself as inconspicuous as possible, trying to avoid the mad march jacks and predators, like the hen harrier. Many people maintain that a hare gives birth to one leveret at a time, in different forms, some distance apart. These pictures prove that the young are together at birth. Her leverets have just been born and lie helpless at her feet. They're only a minute old. A jack hare has spotted her. To a jack, a Jill is a Jill, and as such, an object of courtship at all times, however delicate the circumstances. Leverets mean little to him. While the Jill is away, giving the jack a thorough boxing, a grey partridge wanders past. It knows that something's up, but it can't quite figure what. Like most mammals born in the open, leverets are fully furred, have their eyes open, and will soon be mobile. This is in complete contrast to rabbits, which are born naked, blind, and helpless in the protection of a rabbit warren. Young hares have no such security. Solitary life starts early. Within a day or two, the mother separates her leverets and hides them in what are called milking forms, where she'll come to suckle them for a few minutes each day just after sunset. Otherwise, they're on their own. It was this dispersal of the young that made people think they were born separately. Being scattered and lying still is their best hope of avoiding predators. Once they're a week or two old, they move about a bit. This is when many get taken by foxes and stoats and by birds of prey like buzzards. Rabbits are said to kill leverets too by biting them in the back of the head. This may be just another old wives' tale, but there could be some truth in it. Buck rabbits often kill their own young and might do the same to young leverets if they came across them. The Jill hare distributes her young several hundred meters apart to reduce the chances of them all being discovered. Even so, 50% of leverets die before they're a month old. It's a cruel start to life, but hares have several litters each year to compensate for this. Litter size increases through the season, from 1 in February to a maximum of 5 in August. Young hares in the same neighborhood often group together. If they reach 6 weeks old, they have a good chance of survival, unless there's heavy rain. Many are born long before the crops are high enough to give them any shelter, and they succumb to exposure and disease. This is why a series of wet springs in the 60s was thought to have caused the fall in numbers. More significant was the development of new farm machinery that moved faster and cleared the ground more completely than the old-fashioned sort. The leverets may have been able to run away from it, but when it's gone, they have a problem finding enough food. Fewer weeds and narrower field margins are good news for the farmer, but they mean starvation for young hares. After the antics of the mating season, late summer is a time of quiet. Hidden in the clover and luxuriant meadowgrass, the hares keep a low profile. The pheasants are out too, taking full advantage of the abundance of insects before the grass is cut for hay. And the rabbits are making the most of it. There's another widely held belief that hares will never feed on ground used by rabbits, because they make the grass foul for them. But hares do frequently feed alongside rabbits. Both are far too busy stocking up for the winter ahead to take much notice of each other. In winter, rabbits have their burrows for warmth and shelter. When the weather really sets in, they can hole up for a few days. Hares don't go in for underground protection, although they can dig perfectly well. With their backs to the gales, they somehow manage to survive the winter out in the open. Hares even manage to survive in the barren mountain country of Scotland, but it's the blue hare, not the brown, that lives here. It is by far the hardiest of the three races. In autumn, it molts its bluish-grey summer coat for a white winter one. It's smaller than the brown hare and has shorter ears. Like all hares, it eats its own pellets, so that the food passes through its digestive system twice. This enables them to extract every last ounce of nourishment from their poor diet. The blue hare shares its mountain domain with the red grouse and with the ptarmigan, which also turns white in winter. It's difficult to imagine how either ptarmigan or hares are able to survive in winter. In fact, the Romans thought they ate snow to keep alive, and that's why they turned white. Today we know that it's the change in day length and temperature that triggers the change in color. In the snow, the white coat provides protective camouflage against eagles, but it can be a death warrant if there's an unexpected thaw. Crouching under these conditions won't do any good at all, though a predator might just mistake it for an isolated patch of snow. When disturbed, a mountain hare always takes off uphill. With its hind legs much longer than the forelegs, this is the natural direction for it to run. Neither a fox nor a dog can outpace it in a straight uphill run like this. Only an eagle could be in with a chance. Every few meters, the hare puts on a booster sprint to keep it moving at speed. Winter lasts 6 months for the mountain hare. It won't breed until conditions improve in March or April. Down south in England, the brown hare starts its courtship as early as the new year. The snow doesn't deter it at all. The hares are hopping mad already. In this extraordinary free-for-all, the right to mate is in hot and violent dispute. Mad and wild as the brown hare is, the most hare-brained hare of all must be the Irish hare. This archive film was shot at Aldergrove Airport in Northern Ireland in the 1960s. The amazing thing is that all these hares actually seem to enjoy living at the airport. What possible attraction can this ear-shattering and dangerous environment hold for such a sensitive animal? We'll never know for sure, of course. But perhaps living here enables the hare to satisfy its enormous capacity for recklessness. When the planes land and take off, the hares career around the airport as if they're trying to race them. Perhaps the aircraft provide a good excuse for the hares to go mad all year round, not just in spring. The Irish hare suffered the same decline as the brown hare of mainland Britain, probably for the same reasons. To try to improve the population, some landowners trapped hares in areas where they were abundant to transfer them to places where they'd become scarce. But in the words of the old cookery book, first catch your hare. As the beaters work the surrounding countryside, the hares come leaping in towards the net. Hares are very powerful runners. They can be very artful at dodging too. The keepers gently extricate the hares from the net. Gripping the hare by its loose belly fur doesn't harm it. And once they're in the specially designed boxes, they seem to accept their brief captivity. Transit to the release sites takes a few hours at most, and all the hares survive the journey. Translocating hares usually produced only a temporary improvement, and it's now going out of fashion. After all, if hare numbers fall in a particular place, it's for a reason. Disease or poor habitat will take their toll of the newcomers, as they did of the previous population. Current research is centered on crop varieties and the impact of predators such as foxes. At least conservationists, farmers and sportsmen all wish to ensure the future of this mad, unpredictable and beautiful animal. Long may she lead.